The story begins with Laris calling her sister Au to apologize for her choices, which Au disapproved of. Laris had been involved in questionable activities, maintaining relationships with multiple men, and now she wanted to leave that life behind. Au, upset with Laris, doesn't answer her call. Au works as a makeup artist. Meanwhile, Laris heads out to meet a client. Her friend, a taxi driver who also has feelings for Laris, drops her off. This client, despite having a wife and daughter, still wants to continue a relationship with Laris. Laris firmly tells him she will never meet him again and leaves. Angered, the man attacks Laris and attempts to assault her. She tries to escape and calls Au for help, but Au, still angry, doesn't pick up. The man becomes violent, beating Laris severely. He drags her to a balcony and threatens her, saying, "If you don't come to me, you won't be with anyone." Then, he pushes her off the balcony. The fall leaves Laris with 24 fractures throughout her body. She is rushed to the hospital, and doctors inform Au that part of Laris's brain is dead, stating that only a miracle could save her. The doctors also show Au an X-ray, revealing multiple needles embedded in Laris's brain. Everyone is shocked and baffled, as this case is beyond the doctor's expertise. News about Laris spreads quickly. Laris's friend suggests to Au that Laris should be taken to their village to see a shaman, a witch doctor believed to have the power to drive away spirits. Au initially refuses, convinced that Laris will recover in a few days. However, Laris dies shortly afterward. But then, her body suddenly starts trembling, and she comes back to life. On their way back, Laris shares a car with another patient who claims to see someone standing nearby, though Au can't see anything. Laris awakens fully, and Au takes her home to care for her. Realizing the situation is dire, Au decides to take Laris to a shaman and they return to their childhood village. Au consults a local police officer, who points her toward a shaman known for his abilities. In the village, Laris becomes the subject of gossip, as news about her strange case has spread everywhere. While watching an old video, Au recalls a conversation with Laris, where Laris mentioned that surgery was expensive. They joked about getting Susuk, magical needles believed to enhance beauty and preserve youth. Susuk needles, made from gold and other precious metals, are inserted into the body through a ritual. They are said to protect their bearer from demons and ghosts, but come with significant risks. If used excessively or ignored, the magic can backfire, causing the body to become a target for spirits. Those who wear Susuk and fall ill or experience an accident often suffer greatly, as their bodies are bound by the magic. Au later notices a strange smell coming from a broken dummy. When she removes the dummy's broken face, she finds a decaying face filled with insects, and shockingly, she sees Laris's face in it. However, when Laris's friend comes to check, everything appears normal. The next day, the shaman arrives and begins removing the Susuk needles from Laris's face. The process causes her immense pain, and Laris resists as though another presence within her is trying to stop the shaman. Laris scratches the shaman's face, but the shaman calms her down and prepares to leave. On his way out, he mentions that the Susuk in Laris's body is not ordinary and advises them to leave Laris as if she were already dead. Au disagrees, and the shaman departs. Determined, Au searches online for a Susuk expert and finds one. Suddenly, Laris wakes up. Au sees Laris moving on her phone screen, but when she turns around, Laris is still lying on the bed. Startled, Au drops her phone. When she picks it up, she briefly sees a ghost standing nearby, but the figure disappears moments later. Laris points to one side, and the ghost begins to terrify Au again. The next day, news spreads that the shaman has died, his face bearing a scar. A local thug informs the villagers that the incidents are related to Susuk, a mystical practice. He claims that Laris underwent the Susuk ritual, and her current condition is a result of it. Au asks Laris's friend to visit the expert and seek help. They also confirm the shaman's death through a village announcement. Laris's friend approaches the expert, explaining that Laris only began to recover when the shaman prayed for her. Hearing about Laris's condition, the expert agrees to help. Au apologizes to Laris for not answering her call that day and expresses her desire to bring her back to normal. She notices Laris's body writhing in pain and cleans a wound on her stomach, where she shockingly finds an eye embedded. This discovery leaves Au dizzy and shaken. As Au tries to collect herself, a figure emerges from the closet and frightens her. Laris sees the entity too. Moments later, Laris's friend arrives, and everything appears normal again. They take Laris to the expert, who warns them to stay away because Laris's body contains an extraordinary amount of Susuk, which are causing internal conflict within her. The expert begins the process of removing the Susuk. As he works, a swarm of bats flies out of Laris's mouth, and a ghostly voice within her declares it will not leave her body. One by one, the expert extracts the Susuk, encountering multiple ghosts inside Laris. Finally, Laris calms down, but the expert is astonished to discover that one Susuk still remains. This particular Susuk is extremely powerful, and the expert warns that removing it could cost Laris her life. He explains this to Laris's friend, who has secretly loved her for a long time but never confessed because he felt unworthy of her. Meanwhile, Laris had once confided in Au, saying, "I think my friend will never accept me." It becomes clear that both Laris and her friend have feelings for each other but never express them. As Laris begins to recover, the villagers start hurling insults at Au, calling Laris a prostitute and saying she should die. This deeply upsets Au, who leaves in tears. The thug confronts Au and begins speaking ill of their mother, revealing a harsh truth. He says, "Your mother had relationships with many men, just like Laris. Go ask the police officer, he and your mother were involved too. You and Laris even have different fathers." This revelation shatters Au. Seeking the truth, she learns from the police officer that their mother was the most beautiful woman in the village, attracting many admirers who pursued her and formed relationships with her. Laris scratches the shaman's face, but he calms her down and prepares to leave. On his way out, he explains that the Susuk in Laris's body is unusual and suggests they should leave Laris behind, as if she were already dead. The story shifts to the past. When Laris's mother married, Laris was born. However, her mother had a relationship with another man, who is father of Au. When her mother's husband discovered this, he attempted to kill her. Enraged, the villagers retaliated by killing the man. Though her mother survived, she was left like a living corpse, her body rotting, similar to Laris's condition. Her mother also had Susuk. A shaman was hired to remove it, but the shaman couldn't extract all the Susuk. As a result, they performed a ritual and buried her mother to ensure the Susuk's spirit would remain calm within the grave. Laris's body begins to rot again, prompting her friend to suggest they let her go, as they've done everything possible, and continuing like this is only causing her more suffering. The police officer then reveals a shocking truth to Au. "I am the man and who have an affair with your mother. You are my daughter, and I am your father." Devastated by this revelation, Au leaves in grief. Meanwhile, Laris's ghost manifests. While Laris appears to be improving, she tries to get close to her friend. Au walks in on this but finds Laris lying on the bed in the same condition as before. Believing that her friend is taking advantage of Laris, Au angrily tells him to leave. Later that night, while leaving, Laris's friend encounters a group of thugs heading toward Laris's house. He tries to stop them, resulting in a fight. Inside the house, Au sees a younger version of Laris leading her to their mother, who looks terrifying. Suddenly, the same ghost attacks Au from behind. The police officer and the expert arrive just in time to save her. The expert informs Au that Laris is already dead and that the Susuk's spirit has completely taken over her body. He takes Au and the officer outside and begins a ritual. The expert explains that Laris shares a connection with her mother. Just as the lady shaman couldn't remove all the Susuk from her mother's body, Laris's Susuk also remains partially intact. The lady shaman buried Laris's mother in a special grave to contain the Susuk's ghost. If Laris cannot be cured, she must be buried in the same grave. Meanwhile, the thug incites the villagers, urging them to expel Laris and Au from the village. The angry mob storms Laris's house. As the expert performs the ritual to remove the final Susuk, the ghost throws him across the room. Possessed, both Laris and the expert begin fighting like wild animals. At one point, the expert sees Laris momentarily return to normal and attempts to extract the last Susuk. However, Laris bites into the expert's throat, tearing his flesh as if thirsting for blood. She kills the expert. Au and the police officer are horrified. The officer ties Laris in cloth, declaring that she must be buried in her mother's grave. The villagers arrive and kill the officer. Au and Laris's friend manage to take her to the graveyard. The thug follows them, but Laris's friend runs him over with a car. Upon reaching the graveyard, Au notices a cloth tied to a stone. She realizes this may be the object that kept her mother's Susuk ghost confined to the grave. They dig up her mother's grave, finding her corpse completely intact, as if it had never decayed. Suddenly, her mother's ghost rises and attacks Au. Laris's friend saves her, but Laris, now fully consumed by the Susuk's ghost, kills him. Now Laris becomes normal and hugs Au. Au apologizes to her, realizing that it was the ghost's trick. She pushes Laris into the grave, and the ghost leaves, meaning it has calmed down. Au then closes the grave. She gets into Laris's friend's taxi and returns, acting as if nothing has happened. However, she feels a deep sadness because she has lost everyone she loved in her life. In reality, a person who has Susuk cannot die peacefully until all of the Susuk has left their body. Only the person who placed the Susuk in that individual's body can remove it. This movie clearly illustrates how far people are willing to go to attain beauty. We should avoid Susuk or anything similar, as such things may offer temporary happiness, but they can ultimately destroy our lives. A person should not be overly concerned about their appearance.